This is a fascinating story all the way through. And it involves Trump Russia. You've got Stormy Daniels, Michael Avenatti. You've got the UAE Qatar feud. You've got the Rosneft deal. You've got the Steele dossier. It's all in there. So this is a story that I published at The Intercept earlier today. The Qatari investor is named Ahmed al-Rumaihi, and there he is in the background. He was the head of a $100 billion wing of the Qatar Investment Authority. So the QIA is either the largest or the second largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. All the natural gas money that the country earns, they put into basically a bank account, and they use that bank account to go around and invest in properties and other businesses around the world. As it emerged that he was here, in the back of this picture, from a Michael Avenatti tweet, conspiracy folks on Twitter started saying, oh, wait a minute, I think that's the guy that runs this big fund within the QIA. Can we pull that up, Eric? Okay, so, and it started, I think Seth Abramson was one of the first people who jumps in on it. So what was Seth's first charge? That Steele's dossier says Putin gave Trump a brokerage fee from the sale of 19% of Rosneft, Russia's oil giant. Today, Michael Avenatti said a top agent of QIA, which bought the Rosneft stock, was secretly at Trump Tower for 48 hours after the sale. This, by the time I saw it, already had like 10,000 retweets, and I saw it within probably an hour of it going up. And it was a weird experience because I know this person, I know Ahmed. I had been talking to him for several months about why he was at Trump Tower that week. He'd been talking to me off the record, and he had only recently agreed to go on the record. And so I actually tweeted at Seth, careful, that's not why he was at this meeting. And if you make these connections, you're actually undermining your own cause, because when it is revealed that what you're saying isn't true here, then you're missing the real story, which may be even more corrupt than the one that you think is going on. So what he's saying is a Qatar-Russia deal that closed on December 10th that was referenced in the Steele dossier to sell 19% of Rosneft might be related to this December 12th Trump Tower meeting. And this is what a lot of these online detectives end up doing with dates. They say, on the very same day that X happened, that Y happened.
And there's a connection here, isn't there, to the Steele dossier?
That's absolutely correct. Well, the connection is that 4 days before this meeting at Trump Tower on December 12, 2016, there was a multi-billion-dollar oil deal, a sale from Russia, a Russian gas giant called Rosneft, to Qatar for a 19.5% stake in the company. And what's important here is that in the Steele dossier, it's alleged that in the summer of 2016, during meetings in Russia, Carter Page set up an alleged quid pro quo deal in which Trump administration officials would eventually promise to undo sanctions against Russia in exchange for a stake in this future oil purchase.
There are absolutely geopolitical implications, and I'm sure there's a ton of corruption involved around the sale of a major state-owned gas company from one country to another, no question. Linking it to the Trump campaign simply based on a photo showing a Qatari guy in an elevator is a bit of a leap, though. And here are a couple reasons why. Okay, the deal closed on December 10th. If you've ever bought a house, did you walk into the house, make an offer on the house, and close that day? This is 19.5% of one of the biggest oil companies in the world. You think that deal closes in an afternoon? No, this would have been in the works for months, if not longer. Separately, okay, yes, he's Qatari and he works for QIA, but does that mean that he, works on the side of the business that was involved with this deal? He told me that no, in fact, he didn't have anything to do with the Rosneft deal, and that he only started in May of 2016 with QIA and never worked on that deal the whole way through. Doesn't mean that the deal is not interesting. It just means that linking it to this December 12th meeting at Trump Tower is just silly. The next one goes into a sworn declaration in a lawsuit against Rumaihi. And you can't make this stuff up. So Rumaihi, after he left QIA, set up his own new fund called Sport Trinity. Sport Trinity invested in Big Three, which is the 3-on-3 basketball league that is co-owned by Ice Cube and a man by the name of Jeff Kwatnitz. Jeff Kwatnitz happens to be good friends with Steve Bannon. They were business partners previously. In early April, Kwatnitz sued Rumaihi over a financial dispute. Kwatnitz said that he promised more money than he had put in. Rumaihi said that he was withholding money because the company was being mismanaged. And so early April, they go to court. Mid-April, when the Emir of Qatar comes to Washington, D.C., Ice Cube and Kwatnitz take out a full-page ad in the New York Times kind of attacking the Emir, putting geopolitical pressure to try to get a settlement out of this case. They don't settle yet. So then in early May, they introduce a new affidavit to the lawsuit. In the new affidavit, Kwatnitz remembers that, according to him, Rumaihi asked Kwatnitz to connect him to Steve Bannon so that he could bribe Steve Bannon. Kwatnitz said, how dare you offend me that way? Steve Bannon would never countenance the idea of a bribe. And he said, Rumaihi laughed and said, do you think Flynn turned down our money? So they now have Rumaihi in Trump Tower, they think meeting with Flynn, and this winds up on Avenetti's Twitter feed. And so now Slate magazine and a couple others start connecting these dots. They say, oh, there's sworn testimony saying that he bribed Michael Flynn. Here's video of him meeting with Michael Flynn on December 12th. He must have bribed him. Maybe it's connected to Rosneft. I think Slate's headline was, this Trump Tower meeting could unlock the Steele dossier or something, like really breathless. So I asked Rumaihi, did you actually try to bribe Flynn? Did you meet with Flynn? Turns out, in fact, he did not even meet with Flynn. It's true that he came in to Trump Tower with the foreign minister, but it was a one-on-one meeting between the foreign minister and Michael Flynn. He sat in the lobby chit-chatting with the other guy who was waiting for a meeting with Michael Flynn, and that was Rick Perry, who was trying to become energy secretary. That one of the departments he had called to be banned, as a matter of fact. And there's actually video of Rick Perry that same day walking through the lobby, so that part checks out. But the reason that I had been talking to him is that he'd been saying for the last couple months, off the record, that he'd had a separate meeting that was with Michael Cohen. And at that meeting, he was discussing the possibility of Qatar doing a $50 billion infrastructure fund. That'd be a great political win for Trump. Look, we're not even sworn in yet, and we're making America great again. Foreign investment's going to come in. American jobs are going to come in. And then they get to this weird moment in the conversation, he says, where Michael Cohen says, and what you can do, you could revitalize some Midwestern towns. Now, you come into the town, there's a steel factory that's collapsing. You can buy the steel factory, and then some people I know can come in and provide the know-how, and you guys provide the capital. We'll split the profits 50-50. Great PR win for you. The town turns around, and it's a great deal. And he remembers thinking, it certainly sounds like a great deal for the people who wind up owning 50% of this business without actually putting any money in. And so then he asks, well, what projects do you have in mind around the country? What kind of infrastructure projects? He says, well, before we go any further, I'd need $1 million. And so when the news came out that Michael Cohen had gotten $1 million from Novartis, $1 million from AT&T, a bunch of money from these other much more opaque and less well-known companies for these consulting fees, I remembered, oh yeah, Ahmed had told me this story about this $1 million that Cohen had hit him up for. So here we have the personal lawyer to the president hitting up a foreign representative of a sovereign wealth fund for $1 million, which is, if that's the way that it unfolded, it could be wildly corrupt, could be business as usual in Washington. Your typical lobbying or consulting fees, whatever it is, it's extraordinarily newsworthy, and it winds up getting lost and overshadowed by this kind of ceaseless, relentless look for the key that will unlock the Steele dossier or this missing link that will connect things. Instead of trying to shoehorn everything into Russia, let's try to look at the corruption for what it is, expose it for what it is, and deal with that. And if in that process you do wind up finding that Rosneft was sold to Qatar so that Trump could get a slice of it, well, then great. But why make all these unsubstantiated leaps when there's so much else that's so interesting and so damning to talk about?
So off the record, you've been told this story of, I love the description in the article. You should all read it, folks. You know how Michael Cohen's eyes light up when he finds out that
$50 billion.
Yeah. And so it didn't strike you as strange. That just sounds like that's what people do. If you know the president, you're going to try to get some money.
It's a little bit over the top.
Aren't you supposed to file as a lobbyist first?
Well, not if you're not lobbying. So the way that you get around it is you say, I'm offering strategic advice.
Okay.
I'm offering insights, and if you'll notice, that's how it was phrased, because the companies, which should also have, if it was lobbying, have disclosed.
Okay. So it sounded sleazy, but not illegal, not a big deal. So you weren't feeling like you were sitting on a big story.
Yeah.
Or you were?
Yeah, I just couldn't do it. Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. So
definitely.
So he mentioned it in the course of did he say, okay, off the record, and then I'll tell you this, or he just mentioned something? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you knew all this, and then Avenatti decides that there's something about that guy in the elevator, that this is going to be a big thing, or he wants other outlets to explore it. And then people start chasing the wrong rabbit down the wrong holes.
Right rabbit, maybe, down the wrong hole.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, sure.
Yeah.
And then you decide, all right, I better write an article to clear
Well,
it
no,
up.
I was actually, they do the New York Times ad. They hadn't caved to the pressure, so then they put in the new affidavit that includes these Steve Bannon, Mike Flynn allegations. That's early May. So I think that's what got him thinking, like, okay, this is in a public filing right now. And there is a litigation tactic, and I'm not saying it was used in this case, but there is a litigation tactic where you put inflammatory allegations into a lawsuit, and then you find reporters and say, hey, check out our lawsuit. You might find something interesting in there. I think Daily Mail wrote this one, and there's protection from libel laws because the reporter at that point is just saying, look, this is what's in the court filing. I'm not saying it's true, or I'm not saying it's false. All I'm saying is it was filed in court. Somebody averred it under oath. And so once it was in the court filing, it was only a matter of time until it emerged publicly. And so I think at that point, he's like, okay, well, I'm going to be pulled into public. So at this point, I need to just go ahead and tell my side of the story.
So why would somebody put in a court filing this?
To pressure. So, because he also said that he tried to bribe Bannon at the time, or he wanted to use him to bribe Bannon. The idea is that, so this would be the counter theory, that you put that in the court filing. It appears in the Daily Mail. It appears in the news. The Emir of Qatar and the ministry over there says, look, this is causing us huge PR problems. You need to settle this case. And he has an LA lawyer who has engaged in this tactic before. And it's completely legit. Like, it's fun. Hey, look, if this is how you're going to...
Doesn't somebody sign their name and say, I swear this is true in a court filing?
Right. I'm not saying it's fine to lie.
Okay. Uh-huh.
But I guess, it's war. In our article, we talked to an employee at the time who has since quit, who said when this conversation was allegedly happening in January of 2018, they were already locked in a fight over cash with Jeff telling Ahmed, I need the cash. We need the money now. And Kai Henry makes the point, if you're having this conversation about give me money, how do you transition in that conversation to, oh, and by the way, can I bribe Steve Bannon through you?
So bottom line, Seth Abramson is wrong about this.
Seth Abramson makes some interesting points throughout that. But yeah, he's connecting the wrong dots in some cases. Yeah.
Slate is wrong about this. And
it doesn't unlock the Steele dossier.